A Massachusetts Citizens Commission tasked with devising a plan for overturning the 2010 Citizens United ruling released its first report about a month ago. That ruling gave corporations and unions the right to unlimited spending on political campaigns. For context and analysis, I spoke with UMass Amherst professor of political science, Paul Collins Jr., and I first asked why this decision came before the court to begin with.
It's an interesting story that a lot of folks miss. So during the presidential election, there was what then was a very small group known as Citizens United who wanted to run, it was basically a long-form political advertisement called Hillary the Movie, and it was critical of Hillary Clinton. And the Federal Election Commission determined that that would violate the Bipartisan Campaign Finance Reform Act. And so they said you can't run it. And Citizens United challenged that. The case gets up to the Supreme Court, and the court decides that those provisions in the Bipartisan Campaign Finance Reform Act are in violation of the First Amendment. And this opens up the doors for the types of independent expenditures and the types of expenditures by corporations and labor unions that we see prolific in the American political system today.
Yeah, we heard a lot following the decision. Corporations are people, and there are people who disagree that corporations are people. And in fact, probably a lot of those people live here in Massachusetts, because what we saw more recently was a ballot question that people looked at this and said, you know what, we want a commission that's going to study ways that this might get overturned at the national level. And so what we've seen recently is this commission issuing its first report, and you've taken a look at the report, and I've gone through it too. And so give me your overall reaction to the commission's report.
Yeah, so by an overwhelming majority of citizens of the Commonwealth, the commission was put together to draft this report. In reading the report, I take away a few major things. First of all, the report concludes that spending post-Citizens United has gotten out of hand. They determined that this is bad for democracy. It privileges certain elite interests over the sort of common people. And then another major part of the report is that it calls for some type of action. And in particular, the report reviews a variety of constitutional amendments. It doesn't take a position on any particular amendment, but it reviews a variety of amendments that have either been introduced or might be introduced in the future.
To your point about the spending, the report points out that if you look at 2000 to 2010 spending, whether it's elections or on ballot questions, was $260 million here in Massachusetts. That number in the 10 years after Citizens United was $700 million. When you look at that difference, what does that say to you?
It most clearly points out that one of the major fears that would come in the post-Citizens United era did indeed come to fruition, which is to say there's a tremendously larger amount of money being spent on political campaigns today than there was prior to the court's 2010 decision. The report also goes into some details about where that money is coming from, and I think that's one of the most significant conclusions that folks often miss, which is a lot of this money actually isn't coming from corporations and labor unions. It's coming from extremely wealthy individuals, private people.
The report says, in fact, that 71% of the money came from those individuals. But if you look at it, it's 0.47% of the American population made the political contributions of $200 or more. 0.47%. So that's a small portion of folks as you're pointing to this. People who have been supportive of this, if we look nationally, largely it's divided along party lines. Republicans tend to be more supportive, Democrats tend to be more critical. Interestingly, though, when you kind of break it down and look at the state level, the legislative level here in Massachusetts, there's been bipartisan support to look at this issue. What do you make of that divide when you nationally and state look at this issue?
It's a great question. So because Massachusetts is largely, but not exclusively, a state that's dominated by the Democratic Party, the politics of the legislature tend to reflect those more progressive politics, which tend to align closely with ideas of putting limits on campaign finance. Now, when you move to the national level, there's very good reason why national level politicians, members of Congress, members of the Senate, are reluctant to put any serious limitations on campaign finance spending into place, which is very simply put, it could hurt their campaigns, right? So both parties live in this post-Citizens United era that they've had to adapt, and particularly for the Democratic Party, it took a little bit more time to figure out how to adapt to how do we run campaigns in this era where the spending is truly massive.
There was one criticism of the commission as it's been formed in Massachusetts. A group that was opposed to this pointed out there's not a single Republican on the commission, and the commission fired back saying, Governor Charlie Baker had his chance to put, in fact, Charlie Baker put 3 people on this commission, and Charlie Baker is a Republican, so there was some Republican voice. So a little bit of a disagreement there. When we look specifically at what the commission came out and said, they had 3 different recommendations as to ways that this could, in fact, eventually become a constitutional amendment. Is there one that stands out to you as more of interest or more plausible than the others?
So it's a really difficult mountain to climb to pass a constitutional amendment. They discussed 3 major options. 2 are sort of more mainstream options, which is to go through the traditional process, which is through Congress, and get 2/3 of both houses to introduce an amendment. And then the way I read the report, they seem to prefer calling for a state constitutional convention, having the states actually introduce this. That could be more plausible to me, because what that allows you to do is kind of circumvent the congressional route, which, as I mentioned, a lot of members of Congress are fine with this because it helps them not only get elected, but get reelected. So it seems to me that if we were going to see a constitutional amendment proposed and seriously considered in this country to undo some of what Citizens United did, it would probably go the constitutional convention route.
If you think about the fact that, okay, we've had this for a decade, we've seen that spending balloon, and as you point out, there are many people who've run for these positions who've benefited from the use of this money. Is it possible to put that spending genie back in the bottle at this point?
Maybe. I'm a little bit skeptical that it is possible. So I think a constitutional amendment would have to be very well constructed in order to get at what I think is actually the core issue, which is not corporate and union spending, but rather these extremely wealthy elite individuals that are doing a massive amount of spending funneled through what we sort of call super PACs. Now, you can do that. There's no question that an amendment can be written that way. But what I worry about is that there's going to be ways to circumvent that amendment. Super PACs, we sort of think about them as something relatively new in the post-Citizens United era, but there were very analogous methods of trying to influence elections before Citizens United came around.
As you look at this issue and think more broadly, are there other countries or other areas that you can point to that you think they have a better handle on campaign spending when it comes to political elections?
Yeah, so it might be interesting to look at some other nations that focus more on public spending and the public financing of elections. This is an experiment we've tried in this country. You know, if you recall, you can check a box on your tax form to donate money to a presidential election campaign. But what happens is the parties, the folks running for president, they have to agree to not spend over a certain bar in order to get that public money, and they've realized that it's not helpful for them to make that agreement. So they pass on the public financing. If we move to a strict system of public financing, it would look very different. And I think it would have some benefits of compelling the American electorate to think more and pay a little bit more attention to things like debates, for example, which now, you know, we're inundated with ads and we're not paying as much attention to, you know, the debates, for example, that are going on now in the Democratic primary. But I think if you had publicly funded elections, it might actually compel people to pay a little bit more attention to those things.